technology trained for like decades.
Did he have the legendary wrench that I've heard he has?
What's Dean got to do with it?
It's not really the dick, it's the balls.
Oh.
Cock talk with Locke. I knew I'd get it in, James.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a Dean.
I'm coming in there with a 2-finger cul-de-sac. I'm going to tickle them pink, and they're going to get a dose of Bonzi.
To me, relationships are like a leash, and
Yours didn't go well, right?
No.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Let's start right out. Hey, what happened?
Hi, welcome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the program. My name is Dean, and we have a busy day today. Super busy day today. We have people that we haven't seen in quite some time back, which is nice. I'd like to introduce a fellow who I thought fucking hated us for a month. Please welcome Darren Pfeiffer from the rock and roll band Goldfinger and the Dangerous Darren podcast. James DiFiore, who hates everybody full-time, at James DiFiore on Twitter, and blackballmedia.ca at Lachlan Cross. Joins us as well from 95.7 Cruise FM in Edmonton.
Darren!
Host of the Locker Room. Yeah, Darren's back. Weird, huh?
Darren's back. We missed you, buddy.
You done?
I think I'm done, yeah. I'm pretty sure my hat is straight.
You can tell we all grew up on wrestling.
Where the fuck were you for a
I
month?
did not.
I went to prison.
Let's be serious. Where were you?
I was moving house, which, as you know, is a lot of packing boxes. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
I got it.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of packing boxes, unloading boxes, setting up equipment, which is a lot of fun when you own a lot of equipment, tearing it all down, putting it in boxes, and then the clothes and furniture and the moving company and the 2 dogs and a cat and a wife, which I lumped together as pets. And
nice.
So I'm packing it, and then my friend got married in Mexico, so we went down to Mexico to Cozumel.
Yeah.
Which is just off of Cancun and off the peninsula there in the south.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Mexico.
Very beautiful island. Never been to that part of Mexico, and had a blast. Drank every day, swam, snorkeled, scuba dove, went on boating excursions, drank a lot. Did I mention drinking? Because there was drink. There was a lot of
times. Yeah.
Now's not the time to bring up the muling either, right?
Yeah.
If
you hooped a drug and you brought it back, you got to leave it there.
I did bring back a lot of painkillers like Somas and
you really?
Some Cialis for the wiener.
In the prison wallet.
Do they have cut rate boner drugs down in Mexico? Is that right?
No, I took one of the Cialis a week ago, and I still have a boner right now.
That's awesome.
You're supposed to see somebody about that.
I'm on hold with my doctor. I'm waiting.
Next time you need painkillers or boner pills, I'll just send you a vial of my blood. You'll be fine.
Wow, it's like Spider-Man's blood.
The centrifuge, his blood.
No, yeah, I brought back. I also brought back some colchicine, which is used for gout control.
Yeah. Here's a question I have for you. That's all great. I'm glad you brought everything back. I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're here. Did you not think to tell any of us that you wouldn't be around for over a month? If we're like, because you've been on every mailing list, every tweet we send back and forth. Not one of us disparaged you, by the way. Not one. In fact,
well, that's not true.
No offense. No one.
It was at least 3 of us.
No one asked.
At least 3 of us.
But inside, I was like, "Fuck! Did I piss the guy off? Like, did I upset the man? Did I do?" Because you know when someone doesn't call you back or return a text, you get anxious for some reason. You're like,
your mind starts to wonder.
Yes.
Like, did I do something to piss the Darren off?
Yeah. So we're texting each other back and forth for well over 40 days. I just checked. You haven't responded.
You guys talk exclusively on the Twitter thread, which I don't go on Twitter as much as I do Instagram or Facebook. But every now and again, I'll take a long crap. sit down and go, I wonder what's going on in the Twitterverse. Oh, look at Locke and James and Dean having a conversation about everything under the sun.
That's exclusive. If I don't have my phone in the bathroom, I don't even go to the bathroom. So I get that. It just would have been nice. Like you should have.
Why
just
would
said,
you go take a shit without your phone? Like
it's impossible.
It's absolutely.
I don't remember the last time I've taken a crap and done this.
Yeah. Just waiting for the evacuation. That's all you're doing, right?
Push that.
I need, and because you're sitting there for a few minutes, you're like, I want to be productive. Maybe get back to some. What I do is I this is a terrible thing. The emails and the tweets and this text that you didn't want to respond to during the day when you're working. The bathroom is where I respond to those, all of them. So if you didn't hear from me for a couple days and I finally got back to you, you can guarantee I got back to you from the shitter.
There should be a bathroom font so that we all know when Dean is texting us from the shitter.
Yeah.
Just finger painted brown letters.
Little emoji.
The guy a small smile to our face, right? You know, like Dean's taking a crap. Excellent.
Glad you're back.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Everybody's here, and we have an extra today. Really happy to welcome to the program. He's the editor of Quillette, which is an online magazine, and it's actually really, really good. Please welcome a guy who I thought blocked me. I don't think he did, Mr. Jon Kay, ladies and gentlemen. Jon Kay. You like that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
That's great.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, and just by the way, for the record, I literally don't have anyone blocked on Twitter.
Brave.
I have zero. There's actually like a way you can see the people you have blocked. I have 0 people blocked.
Okay.
You know what would be funny, John?
Yeah.
Go block them right now.
Well, no, I tell people I don't block people. I just make them feel blocked. So that's my strategy.
Appreciate you doing this today, John. Say hi to the guys. We are obviously we wanted to have you here for a bunch of reasons. And you came to top of mind, and I owe you an apology. And I wanted to start the podcast with the apology because do you remember when you got into it with Seth Rogen, or Seth Rogen got into it with you because Jesse Brown seems to hate your guts for some fucking unknown reason? And then your mom came to your rescue, and then I jumped in, and then your mom and I had a couple words, and then some of her friends, and then James explained to me what was actually going on, and I felt fucking terrible for weeks. So I want to apologize from the bottom of my heart for listing you in my mind and on social media as part of those crazy wokes, because that's the last thing you are.
That is it is unusual that I would be like confused with that crowd, and I think they would be more outraged than me. But I gotta say, I don't have any specific memory of you doing this. I gotta say, Twitter is like, you have to have a short memory to use Twitter. Pete Sampras once gave great advice for tennis players. He just said, you have to have a short memory. Like if you double fault, move on the next point. Like don't beat yourself up over that stuff. And on Twitter, if you're constantly thinking about like what happened yesterday, like, oh, that guy, and I got to block this guy, and just say what you have to say. It's like any medium. Say what you have to say. If people troll you, don't let it get to you. Next day, just say your thing. So I thank you for apologizing. That's nice. It's not exactly in the spirit of Twitter, which is more in the spirit of doubling down. But
did you want me to tell you to fuck off instead?
I feel like that would be more authentic to the medium. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about apologizing. Also, expressions of sincerity are really awkward on Twitter because it's kind of like you're watching a sitcom and someone just looks at the camera and starts giving a speech. And like you're like, wait a sec. That's
that worked for Will Smith when he cried in that one episode of The Fresh Prince. They still play that.
A very special episode. Yeah. Anyway, it's very kind of you to do that. So thank you. Thank you for
your expressions of sincerity in marriage are tough too. Just throwing that out there. Yeah.
I wouldn't know. I've been through one of them and I'm not going back.
Also,
no desire to go
if
back.
I could just say, so I heard your banter a little bit before I came on, and I don't think I can keep up with you guys. My own podcast is maybe, like I tend to interview like academics and stuff, and we don't talk a lot about like penile enhancement or stuff like that. It's mostly like,
well, strap in.
That might be John's way of telling us to fuck off.
No, I'm not. I don't want you to feel like like you're
not being part of the fraternity.
Exactly. Yeah. Like to the extent this is a hazing, I will fail the hazing.
No
It's not a
hazing.
hazing.
Okay.
It might feel like one though. We won't
Just like
You know
lie.
what it is? Do you know why I was really excited to find out that James had, and you were friends, and you would agree to come on the podcast? It's because we live in this fucked up world, and you're a really great example of how fucked up it is. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, watching what happened to you at the behest of Jesse Brown in Canadaland, and then dissecting that and being part of the mob, which I'm sincerely apologetic for, has made me almost embarrassed. And so to be able to have you on to explain it, and you know, you were on Fox, who I just thought used you for propaganda, to be honest with you.
Well, actually, it's interesting you say on Fox, the host like tried to get me to badmouth Seth Rogen. Like
and you wouldn't.
He got me on. Yeah. I told him, I said, Seth Rogen's movie, I found them really funny. That's why I was so surprised that Seth Rogen did this, because if you look at his movies, he seems really like sincere and self-aware, like the kind of guy who you met would be like the opposite of a Hollywood stereotype. And on Fox, like the host had no idea what to do with that, because they sort of have one gear, which is outrage.
Vitriol.
And if instead you're like, well, actually, you know, I really liked his film, his oeuvre, and like that's just, you know, cut to commercial. It's really bad, but it's true. I was actually shocked. I mean, I certainly wasn't shocked by what Jesse Brown did, because it's kind of that's he's one trick pony, does one trick. But with Seth Rogen, I was surprised, and I'm not going to start seeing Seth Rogen's films. You know, as I said on Fox, I even saw Green Lantern. Yeah, that's how much a big a fan I am, and I like Sausage Party.
What about Pineapple Express? What are your thoughts on that?
We all make mistakes in life.
Yeah,
and so you know, it's not, you can't.
Of course, James likes Pineapple Express.
Well, I mean, first of all, can I just say right off that John and I would probably not describe each other as friends. That's mostly for his protection. I don't think he wants to leave this podcast with people thinking that
We've
we're like
never
personal
met.
buds.
I'm not sure we've ever actually met.
We met at the Quillette party, but I spent most time talking to your wife.
Well, that's weird, John, because James played it like he was best friends with you, and he's my best friend, and all. No, he did.
That's
By
the
the
look
way,
of
I
a
have
liar.
a terrible memory for faces and names, numbers,
okay.
dates, colors, shapes.
I was 60 pounds heavier, and I was disheveled and high and drunk when I met
So
you.
one sec. So you lost 60 pounds during the pandemic?
Since I met
people,
you,
it's the opposite. How did you do that?
I did that by intermittent fasting. I only
Okay.
ate between 1 and 6, and I only ate proteins, fruits, and vegetables. That's
All
it.
right.
Yep.
Well, congratulations. That's amazing.
Thanks.
Can we have a picture of Fat James when he talks about Fat James? Dean?
No,
Just to go
I have one on my phone that I look at whenever I'm about to eat something I shouldn't, and I'm just like, I was gonna put a before and after picture, and even me, I have no shame. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it, especially
Dude,
the
you
side
should
profile.
send me the picture. Oh, the side profile is the best. Everybody looks pretty decent from the front, but when you turn sideways and you got a few extra
Why
pounds.
is that shadow there? Then they turn sideways. Oh, that's why
I'm fat. I get it. Yeah.
Every time he makes fun of me for Arby's, I'm going to put that picture of 60-pound overweight James up.
So John, the Rogan thing and the Brown thing, and I wanted to kind of circle back to it. And the reason why I wanted to circle back to it is because what I've kind of come to understand is it was a great snapshot about these social media mobs that attach their interests to a certain personality or media outlet. And then when that personality or that media outlet says something about someone else or another outlet, it is full on. And that's what I saw. I saw this intentional raising of your reputation and a minimizing of your profession, which is an academic journalist, by a guy named Jesse Brown, who runs an outlet called Canadaland, who have done good work with We Charities and all the other stuff they're doing. But it's almost this passive-aggressive assholeness that he has, where he comes after people who just want to write about things that they're interested in. And he seems to think, and by and large, I think a lot of this is why it's a good snapshot, that you're not allowed to talk about certain things. People aren't allowed to write about things. And I find that very fucking interesting.
Well, Jesse Brown's a really interesting example. So yeah, he started up this place called Canadaland, I guess something like 2014, 15, around then. And at the time, it was a pretty good idea. I mean, his thesis originally, which was true, was that like there was this really stale media landscape in Canada. It's all dominated by a half dozen outlets, and he was going to give something new and fresh, which I think at first he did. The problem is he made himself the face of the brand, and it's sort of like the owner of a football team putting himself in a quarterback every game. And I think even he realizes that he's now a liability to the brand, in part because his personality. I mean, he's a somewhat peevish person, and he tends to resent when other people are successful, and then people he tends to go after. And he has made like a lot of. He's a loose cannon. He's actually done some great work, like the stuff with the Kielburgers.
But he's fucking crazy.
Well, I'm not even sure it's crazy. I mean, he himself was kind of he flamed out of the CBC before he started Canadaland, and he never got over that. He always thought he was essentially expelled from the good graces of sort of white shoe Canadian journalism. And he's never gotten over that. And so now his mission is, and he's independently wealthy. He has a successful company that's outside of Canadaland. It's, as I understand, it's the computer industry or something. And he just makes it his mission to try and take down people he thinks are more successful or smarter than he is, which, he himself is pretty successful. If he actually just ran Canadaland in a professional way and got a professional host and took his own like loose cannon approach to attacking people out of the equation, Canadaland actually would be a pretty valuable media asset. Unfortunately, he sort of has used it as a vanity brand for himself. And it's unfortunate because Canada doesn't have an independent media critic. That's what Jesse wanted to be, a media critic, and he has done some good media critic stories. But instead, he's sort of like, it's drifted into wokedom, and he tries so hard to ingratiate himself with a certain woke segment on Twitter that I don't think even that segment trusts him anymore. So he's kind of blown the brand a little.
Just a little bit of a background on what you're saying, John, is that he had a company called Bitstrip, and he was one of the co-owners of it. Do you remember Bitstrip? They used to make
I don't know the company, but I think is that the source of his wealth?
Yeah, so he sold Bitstrip for like $130 million. I don't know how much of that was his cut, but he co-owned it and then he sold it. The weird thing is that he's gotten worse since then. So I don't know. It's like money has made him double down on the parts about Jesse Brown.
I mean, if you live in a world without consequences, you're going to do stupid things. And you do see this with people who are, they have trust funds or, by the way, I mean, to his credit, it sounds like he earned the money by being successful. It's not as if, he just won the lottery or he inherited a lot of cash. So, I mean, good for him. The problem is having all that money insulates you from the kind of business decisions you would ordinarily have to make if you were trying to run a successful, consistent company.
Like he doesn't have to be accountable for any of his mistakes because he's got enough money to be able to say, fuck it.
He doesn't have to worry about libel suits for one thing. I mean, if you can pay libel settlements, then you can make all the false accusations you want because you can pay the lawyers. So that's another thing.
Can I say this? I've met people that have made money, and they were quite often they were dicks before they had money too. Right. I hate that this argument that, oh, you know what, if Justin Bieber would have just been a normal kid. No, he was probably a dick before he had money too. Right. Anyway, I just hate that. These people are wired a certain way. Not everybody that ends up with money
before he made the money, just to put that out there. That dick,
he was probably a dick when he was a kid. Right.
On the other hand, so another example, I saw the One Direction biopic with my middle daughter a few days ago, and according to that movie, as the members of One Direction are presented, they were still really nice guys even after they got famous. Now, the documentary was a admittedly very upbeat piece of film, but
did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy all 2 hours of it?
I enjoyed how into it my middle daughter has seen it like 15 times. She's like super into One Direction, which I don't. It's like One Direction. I don't even know if it exists anymore. But
I don't think so. Who's your favorite guy from One Direction? Harry Styles or Louis?
I don't know. I like the one.
Louis sounds like a member of a boy band.
So,
I don't know.
Good pull, Dean.
I like this. Is there one who's from Scotland? Like there was one who had like this very Scottish accent.
You're floating on your own boat here, John.
Do you watch movies with your kids like I do, where you sit down, you like nod and like yeah, and then you just leave the room and tweet something and come back? Yeah.
So we watched Grease last night, and the most horrifying part of Grease, as from a parent, is right at the end when Olivia Newton-John is presenting herself to John Travolta as like, look, I can adapt to your sort of like gritty urban values. And so she's got on this, like, she's dressed like a strumpet. Okay, that's fine. But then
leather.
She starts smoking. And the message to kids is like, hey, you know, if you want to meet your boyfriend halfway, light him up. And as a parent,
It's good advice in Alberta.
As a parent, I had to say, you know,
we vape out here.
As endearing as Olivia Newton-John is, as much as she has stolen our hearts, you should not smoke as a means to attract a man.
Well, hold on a second. Let me cut you off. Did she smoke after that, or did she say, "Nah, I'm cool"?
Well, no. I mean, in the
scene,
they're at the fair up on high school graduation from Riddell High, and she, like, as you see the up and down shot of her as like this sort of badass woman as she's now become, right? She starts smoking, and
okay,
and I was like, not cool. So I had to give a little PSA.
It's funny because Grease just came out in some article, or some article was writing about Grease, saying that it's another show, that another movie from the past that needs to be canceled, but it was about
it's a great
some
movie.
other scene about rape culture or something like that. They're gonna have to cancel everything, right? Eventually, like John Hughes films, they're not going to be able to last if they get spotlighted again. And
how did the you stopping the movie to explain to your kids that smoking to attract a man? How did that go over with your daughter?
I didn't stop. What I did is I integrated my advice into the musical theme. So I would, you know,
you got up and danced. You got up and danced. Don't smoke. Don't smoke.
Yeah. Anyway, I got the message across.
Attaboy.
I got the message across.
So back to this this whole Jesse Brown charade. We've talked about the individual, but he wrote this piece, and I'm just going to put this up so everybody can see it. This was the start of the whole thing. Darren Locke, if you don't, he wrote an entire piece on the fact that, and this is what put him on. He was probably already on Jesse Brown's radar, but this is what put John on Jesse Brown's radar. Is John did a harmless tweet about how he's been accidentally using, if I'm not mistaken, dog shampoo. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So he writes an entire piece on it. Jesse Brown, an entire piece, calls him a crybaby, says he eats worms for attention. And then Seth Rogen jumps in and says, do people take this John guy seriously in any regard? And then Jesse, the only thing he's got is John's work history, which is actually pretty impressive. He edited the opinion section of the National Post, impressive. Edited the lead editor of the Walrus magazine, impressive. You're currently the editor of Quillette magazine online, very impressive. Then he says, the answer to your question is no. And someone actually who fucking hates Jesse Brown, who's smart, says, hey, Jesse, being a decent person is totally free. It's an amazing bargain. Highly recommend it. But that wasn't the typical response you got. You got inundated with hatred from people over you admitting to using dog shampoo online.
No, well, it's not. So I did this interview.
It wasn't an admission. Sorry, John, but it wasn't an admission. Yeah.
So I did this interview with Jen Gerson of The Line about it. And I actually what happened wasn't that bad. I mean, what happened? So the joke was, it was a 2-part Twitter joke. So the joke is I take a picture. So by the way, I really was using the shampoo because it's
your hair looks unbelievable.
He had more of it 2 months ago.
Can you
it's got a nice shine to it. Nice coat. You're glowing. You're glowing,
Arm & Hammer.
John.
It was Arm & Hammer, and so I should say anyway. So my dog gets her bath in my bathroom, and so there happens to be this dog shampoo there. And during the pandemic, it's not like I'm going to a lot of dinner parties at Buckingham Palace, so you kind of reach for whatever makes suds, and after a week or two, I was like, oh man, turns out I've been using dog shampoo, and then the opportunity for a joke presented itself, and the opportunity was that there's a dog right on it. It's a yellow lab, yeah. So later on, I take a picture of it, and I'm like, oh, I've been using this dog shampoo. I blame the manufacturer. It's partly my own fault. Anyway, and the joke is that there's a picture of a dog in it. So what kind of moron? Okay, you use it, but you're also like blaming others for it. And then I did this it was a 2-parter. So a few minutes later, I did this follow-up tweet saying, oh, people are saying, oh, it's, there's a dog in it, but well, there's all sorts of other pictures on products. And so I present as doubling down, and it's this clueless dad joke. Usually these jokes are good for a couple of dozen retweets. And by the way, there are people who don't follow me for any of my ideological stuff. They just like my dad humor, or I'll tweet about fast food, or I'll tweet about snowboarding, and some people like that, and I try and mix it up. Mm-hmm. But then what happened before Jesse Brown got involved, so that's when Seth Rogen, it was like an hour or two later, just jumped on and said, you're stupid, or you're an idiot. I think it was you're stupid. It's like this 2-line thing. And he has 9 million followers. So then it went viral. and it went viral as like the thing that a celebrity thinks is stupid. But then all these people liked it. So I mean, I got a combination of people like saying, "Oh, Seth Rogen's right, you're stupid." But then I got a lot of people who liked it, and I posted a picture of my dog, and that got like 3,000 likes. So it was this kind of mixed thing. But here's where Jesse Brown comes in. Is I mean, the guy, he's sort of like the second vulture in on every kill, where he's like, "Oh, Seth Rogen's involved. It's safe for me. I have cover." To jump in with some comment and
brave.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the guy has so many axes to grind with so many people. Like basically anyone who has a career in journalism, it's kind of like reawakens this sort of like little kid in Jesse, because as I say, I don't think he's recovered from what happened to him at CBC. And so he's like, he sort of jumps in. By that time, by the way, just like most of the people who had liked to retweet it had already been done. This was sort of just Jesse coming in with a flying elbow, as the 10th person on a big pile of bodies. But there's that, but it was largely because of Seth Rogen, which is weird because Seth Rogen's a comedian, and it was a case of a comedian not getting a joke. And then when it was pointed out to Seth Rogen that he didn't get the joke, then he had to find some pretext to say, well, here's why I don't like jokes. So then the guy, this is true. Seth Rogen went and read a whole bunch of my articles, found one he didn't like, and then tweeted about how he didn't like it. So here's a celebrity in Hollywood who's like wasting his weekend reading the column feed from some second rater like me. It's like, you're in Hollywood, go enjoy yourself, be like a Hollywood celeb.
Yeah.
And then
make another pottery vase. Maybe
we had a long DM exchange. So then, like a couple days later,
you and Seth had a long DM.
Yeah,
DM
we had a long DM exchange because he was like,
he
clearly felt bad about it. And so his first, he was like, DM me, say, well, your article was bad, and it's like trying to sort of justify his behavior. And we went back and forth for like an hour or two, and I was hoping that like at the end I wasn't looking for an apology, like we were talking about before. People don't apologize, but for him to say, what, I overreacted, I didn't get the joke, I was trying to whatever, but he didn't. Like the guy ideologically is super woke, which is okay. I mean, some people are super woke. And he kept like repeating over and over, basically like, I regard you as sort of a protector of, I don't want to put words, I would have to have the DMs in front of me. I don't want to misrepresent what he said, but like he stood by the idea that that I'm someone who needs to be attacked on Twitter because my views are dangerous. Even though,
Jonathan, next time you look at that Twitter exchange, look at it through the lens of, was he trying to get me to say something, and were his comments to me safe if they were published? Because a lot of times what people do is they'll try to get their target to say something in a DM that they might not say during the tweet.
It wasn't that kind of thing. And by the way, he's the celebrity. Reputationally, he's way more at risk from this thing being published. And you're right. I mean, every character I typed under the idea that, hey, if my account is hacked or whatever, or if he gets a bad batch of weed or something like that, whatever. No, but there isn't a word in that conversation that I would mind being made public. I wouldn't make it public because
dude, screen cap it, send it to me, and we'll put it out.
I know you would, but but I mean, he didn't say anything disgraceful. Like it was a sober-minded reiteration of sort of like some of the slogans he was throwing around in his attack on me. I mean, the guy is a true believer in wokedom. It's not like Jesse, where it's like, he probably
he's using it to springboard his reputation.
I mean, the guy probably votes conservative behind closed doors, but like where it's kind of like, well, what's hot on Twitter now? Okay, what hashtag is trending? With Seth Rogen, like you get the sense. I mean, he's in it. Like he is woke. He's a true believer. Because if he weren't, some of the sort of like fanaticism he demonstrates online, you wouldn't see it. Like he really does believe that sort of whiteness is like this terrorist force that's all around us, and all of the slogans we've heard, that's his thing.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a good time also to say that his current, I think you probably get more, I could be wrong, more flack headed your way from people on Twitter for Quillette. I wrote for Colette once. You were my editor, and I still get people tweeting at me that people shouldn't listen to me because I'm a Quillette writer. And I was just, so somewhere along the lines, it morphed into I guess a rag for white supremacists, or whatever they want to spin it as. This is your new book, by the way, that you co-wrote, I guess, or co-edited.
I wrote a couple of pieces in there, but I was co-editor on that. The thing about Quillette, and thank you for promoting the book. That was not a condition of my appearance on the show.
It wasn't.
You
In
have
fact, Dean told me
conditions.
not to, and
I
I was
wasn't
like,
aware of
"Don't."
one condition. You're awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
There you go.
Yeah,
Look
you're
at his
welcome.
blushing.
The reason people, and you see this, like Dan Savage, just of all people, just tweeted out one of our articles, and it went viral. But if you look at his thread, the reason people attack Quillette is because most of the people who write for me and most of our readers are liberals. And what liberals truly fear isn't like a super conservative publication like Breitbart, because they know their friends aren't reading Breitbart. The reason they're so absolutely fanatic in their hatred, or some are, I don't want to generalize, about Quillette is like, if you look at the articles that appear in Quillette, they're written from a classically liberal frame of mind. Like they, it's not like we have articles, denouncing, the right to choose, or, we didn't run anything to my memory that was pro-Trump. I mean, I used to tweet about how much I hated Trump all the time. That makes me and other people at Quillette, including my boss, Claire Lehman, I should specify that, although I'm an editor.
Way to drop the boss's name. That's a hot.
Well, it's
move.
important because sometimes people say, "Oh, you're editor of Quillette." And I don't want to represent myself as editor of Quillette. My boss is based in Australia. Her name's Claire. The reason people feel it so necessary, or people in a certain subculture feel it so necessary to denounce us, is because their friends read us and in some cases write for us. There's even, if you Google it, there was an article in The Nation, which is a left-wing magazine. So it was basically saying, why do liberals continue to read and write for Quillette? Like, the person was pissed off and clearly, as I say, like way more angry at us than, say, the op-ed page of the Wall Street Journal or National Review, any of these truly conservative publications. Like, no actual U.S. conservative would regard Quillette as particularly conservative. And that's why liberals find it so threatening. So that's my theory.
I like the sweet spot that you guys currently.
Well, that's the question. What is
occupy.
Quillette? Like, what's your spot? Like, because you can tell that Fox is right wing, leaning is a nice word to say. You can tell it's right wing propaganda. CNN extremely left. Certain publications like the New York Post, I know that they're right wing leaning. I know that I can get good source information from a few different, like Access AP, I get information from where I can draw my opinions. But when it comes to being an online magazine or an online entity, people want to know which way you lean so that they can play, oh, I identify with that, so I'm going to read your stuff. So where would you put Quillette if you had to explain it, as far as, because it seems like it's a very free-thinking magazine that's not beholden to politics.
Well, in the current environment where everything is tribalistic, my sense, which I've explained to people, is that the sort of people who visit Quillette, and I think it's probably the same as the sort of people who visit, there's other sort of startup publications like Unheard and Counterweight.
Stormfront.
That's not one of them.
Arrow.
With some of these, I would describe them as classically liberal publications that essentially are coalitions between conservatives who were repulsed by Trump and progressives who are repulsed by woke cancel culture. And so if you look at Quillette, I would say those two constituencies. I would say former conservatives who just like they couldn't take the Trump cult, so they left, and former progressives and they couldn't take the woke cult and they left. And that, so you're defining the audience in a negative way. It's like people who aren't this, people who aren't that. Yeah. But in the current tribalized environment, you kind of have to do that because people are so insistent, or at least during the Trump years, they were. Are you with Trump? And if you're not, like from the conservatives' point of view, well, if you don't like Trump, be gone with you. You're out of the cult. And the same way in the woke cult, if you're not, in some cases, I don't know, putting your pronouns in your bio or whatnot, if you're not willing to abide by every letter of the dogma, you're out of that. And so there was this whole ecosystem of smart people who were basically there for the taking in terms of providing them with smart commentary. And Claire, my boss, I'm going to name drop her again because she started this up like in her basement as a new mother. She realized that market was there. And that's why we're now getting, 3-4 million page views a month. I host the podcast. We're up to 3.25 million downloads. I mean, I record the thing in my basement. But people are desperate for it because they're not getting something that reflects their intellectual views from either of the two tribes.
I got a question, John. Have you been approached by Dog Fancy yet?
I don't know what Dog Fancy is.
It's a magazine for all things dogs.
Oh,
Dog Fancy,
I
Cat
haven't.
Fancy. There's two different magazines. Cat Fancy,
I
Dog.
haven't, but it's funny you say that because there's some.
And where does Dog Fancy fall into that spectrum?
So I don't know about Dog Fancy.
Right.
I don't read Dog Fancy because it's too Zionist. I only read Dog Expert because it's a pro-Palestinian dog magazine.
It's too Zionist.
But
I love it.
But I will say this, is that in the couple of weeks when the whole shampoo dog thing was trending, there were all these bots sending me like, just so you know, we have a hair care product that's for people. Maybe you could mention it in your threads. Like, I was popping up on some product placement algorithm that identified me as a thinkfluencer in the hair care space.
Why didn't you go with it, dude?
Well,
why didn't you
because
go with it and
they
say,
weren't
yeah, I'll take
offering money.
$1,250?
No, they were not offering $1,250. They were offering things like, coupons,
Free product.
and free product. Or if you tweet us, we'll tweet you. It's like, great. I always wanted to be tweeted by a Lithuanian hair care products company. So it was like there was no money in it for me. Also, I don't.
You know what? You said you wouldn't be able to keep up with us. You're fucking killing it today, John.
Yeah, you're
That's-
fine. You're
that's
fine.
kind of you to
Hey,
say.
I have a question.
But hang on, before you ask your question, I also remember at the start of the podcast you going, I'm not used to this. Usually I perform with academics. Just wanted to let you know we have at least one of those here.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that would be John.
Yeah, it's John.
I'm not
Here's
an
my
academic.
question. I can't be the only one involved in this podcast that's annoyed by the fact that we haven't touched on your time with Steppenwolf.
Yeah.
Like,
so
It
first
never
of
gets
all,
old.
I have a list of questions I'd like to get to.
I got a
Jon
couple
Kay.
Steppenwolves as well.
Yeah.
Of Steppenwolf, Magic Carpet Ride. He spelled his name with an H.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and so
Yeah, so screw you guys.
So
So I
my
have no
my question
age.
about how your career got started by getting on the Easy Rider soundtrack is not going to fly here, right?
so
I just crossed that one right off.
lumping me in with a guy who spells his name with an H is kind of like a misgendering type of thing.
Oh shit.
And I'm not gonna make
Speaking of woke,
like a big deal of it, except for the fact that you've literally denied my entire existence.
Yeah, way to go.
So thank you
I'm
for that.
sorry.
So,
Thank
John,
you for-
you bring up a good point, Jon Kay, who isn't in Steppenwolf.
Right.
You bring up a good point because you're talking about what Quillette is. How is it possible for anybody now to be able to share? Because I see James do it, and James is much more brave than me, right? And so James speaks his
Brave's a
mind
word for it.
regardless of what's coming back. And last week, we had an opportunity to interview Mike Bullard, which we did, which was phenomenal. And I wasn't sure I wanted our brand attached to Mike Bullard in case, when you're doing the interview, things don't go well, and it went swimmingly, but it was the paranoia that sets in when you do what I do or do what you do, right? Which is how am I going to share my opinion on something that I shouldn't be involved in, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's the trans community, because you did a great article on this
Jesse Signal,
Jesse Signal,
Yeah.
and this guy wrote a great piece about the LGBT community and some people that transition but then desist that transition, and how he was not just Seward but really respected people in the media landscape came after him and said he was anti-trans and a creep, and he was showing up in their DMs, and none of that was
All
true.
lies.
None of it. And
Literally just complete lies.
yeah, all of it.
And in fact, Jesse's podcast co-host raised $50,000 from donors, including me, willing to give that money to anybody who had proof of these. And we there were half a dozen people who were making these claims. And I think Brianna Wu is a successful CEO of a software company. We're like, here, take it. Here's all this money. Just show us the receipts. And I think Brianna, I think that's her name, Brianna, was like, well, I'm not going to let you dictate when I show you the evidence. I'll do it at a time and place of my choosing. It's like, oh, got it. You don't have any evidence at all, and you're just lying. And good for Jesse. But I will just say this: you have to pick your spots a little bit, because if you tilt at every windmill, you're going to have a short career. I'll give you an example. I was on James's Facebook page, and a couple of days ago, James made a very brave post on Facebook, and it was basically saying it was about this horrible Atlantic tragedy, and essentially criticizing people who were cynically trying to turn it into a kind of, it was already a horrible tragedy, but trying to torque it in a way that aligned with their ideology. And
it was basically, if I may, it was basically, if you reflexively think that this was an anti-Asian crime, or because it was a white guy that did it, then you're just as guilty as those who immediately reflexively say it was terrorism when a Middle Eastern man commits a crime.
And right. And by the way, the guy might have been an Asian bigot. You never completely know what's in someone's head, but whatever he did, it was horrible. But anyway, the very first comment was kind of what you'd predict. I think the person led with "Shut up, James. Just shut up," like without even addressing the facts. Because I think by the time James had posted, it was pretty clear that this guy, I think he was a religious extremist. He was ashamed about his sex addiction. I think there were 2 victims who weren't Asian. He apparently had plans to go attack someone in the porn industry with no apparent anyway, the idea was like there was factually, James had more than enough to go on for this post, but was basically attacked by someone who said, this isn't the time for facts and dispassionate analysis. This is the time for tribal virtue signaling. And if you're not interested in doing that, then you're a horrible person.
But if you don't say stuff like that, people say stuff like that because they're in the moment, right? It's virtue signaling at its grossest.
Yeah, but even if it wasn't virtue signaling, it was somebody who was like, who got caught up in this. It's the same reason, people's like, oh, the criminal's in that house, let's go attack him. And in that moment, even otherwise rational people can become crazy. But I thought for a brief moment of putting a comment on James's page and saying like, yeah, James is right. But what would have happened is I would have felt good about it for 5 seconds, and then it wouldn't have done any good because of that phenomenon we're describing, where everyone was just in this mob mentality, and I would have lost 100 potential readers of Quillette. For the next year or two, their memory of Quillette will be like, oh, that time the Quillette editor, jumped in defense of James, who was guilty of wrong thing. And so I made the cost benefit decision to say, you know what, I'm gonna, now's not the time to do this. I think the extent of my courage,
it's incredibly neutering, isn't it? It's self-neutering. I
know. And what was even more pathetic was I clicked like on it, which is sort of like a booby prize for the person that you're not willing to actually vocalize in favor of.
I know. I noticed that, and I was like, you bastard.
Yeah. Why did you just type shut up? Yeah, shut up, James.
Shut up, James.
You know what though? This is the difficult part of our jobs as people in the media. And we had a situation this morning. I have lost the ability to have any reasonable conversation with nut jobs. I used to try, and I've given up completely. We had a QAnon guy going after us. So all I did was just Googled religious quotes and greetings and sent those back to him. And the guy went on for like an hour. And because the point is you can't, you're not fixing that. You're not fixing him. But, and I said to Grant,
performative aspect of it.
So it's really just a waste of time.
It's a complete waste of time. So, and Grant
but in that waste of time, like that's happening on text, in that waste of time, if it's on social media, during that waste of time, people are sewering your reputation, calling you a homophobe, calling you a xenophobic, calling you whatever, a racist, whatever moniker they want to attach to you, that other people can go, oh, we're beating up on a racist on Twitter. Let's go. Let's all get in there, beat up the racist on Twitter. Because is racism bad? It's fucking terrible. So everybody, goes, yeah, let's get some performative points here and beat up on racism because Seth Rogen just said this about this guy, or this important influencer said this about that person.
Here's the sad thing about this exchange that I had with this guy today. After we got over our hearty laughs of the fact that that's the guy that's going to shoot me, He's going to drive down from Fort Mac and wait for me outside of the building after we finish laughing about that, which is not funny, but we try to make it funny. I went on the air and I said, somebody, if you know somebody that's has thoughts like this, you need to talk to them. They're gone. These people need help. Like, they're mentally disturbed and deranged. I should have kept the text and shared it with some of it with you. It's
just want to
it's
say
nuts.
something to Jonathan's point about maybe losing potential 100 followers. I think I agree, but kind of disagree as well, because I think I can't remember who it was. There was a social media expert doing a thing in Toronto like 3 years ago, and I happened to be there, and he said something that really stuck with me, which is that when you're on Facebook and you're on Twitter and there's all these comments, and you're the person that published the original tweet or the Facebook post, you're not actually really worried all too much about if you have X amount of negative comments in your thread, because that's about 6% of the people that actually read it. And he says, what you're really doing is you're publishing content for the audience that is saying nothing, but is reading all of it.
Right.
And I always try to keep that in mind. I don't care. I'm just one of those guys that I don't care. Like, if I was a famous comedian, which would be awesome, but I would never get canceled because I go about it like Bill Burr or Ricky Gervais, where I'm not cancelable because I don't care. And I've come to realize that that is something that we can paste onto our own lives as these small media people, is that, you know, you're writing and publishing things for an audience that is saying nothing. They're not commenting. So it's such a small amount of people that are commenting.
100%, which is why I always, so I mean, there's all this research that shows when people watch political debates, they rarely will remember what people say, but they will grade debaters based on their body language and how confident they look. And if they seem defensive or whatnot, then they'll grade them poorly regardless of how good the content is. And so when I'm on Twitter and, you know, look, I give it out on Twitter and I get it, you know, it's part of the deal. But on those days when I'm getting it, keep your chin up, have a good attitude, be funny, and know that, like, tomorrow's another day, and tomorrow, you know, who knows what's going to happen, but never lose your sense of humor. And one of the reasons that no one has ever been able to cancel me is that I've never lost a sense of humor. That's been a priority for me. And if you can show the people, as you say, James, the 90% of people, like, you know, the people who are like on Jesse Brown's side, or, you know, whatever Jesse Brown's equivalent on the right, Israel Levant or whatever, the people in this, it's not like you're going to say something interesting or funny and they're going to be like, oh my God, I've wasted my life. Like, you know, they're in that cult, and it's part of their performative thing is that they cheer that on. But then there's all these other people watching. If you show that you're funny and self-aware and you don't lose your cool, those people are your future allies, or at least they'll give you a fair shot. Maybe they disagree with you, and it's not like you're going to win over people who don't agree with you. I mean, ultimately, you need to have strong opinions to back up.
You know, John, I fully agree with you about the sense of humor. You got to keep it funny. It's one thing to be informed, have a strong opinion on either side, stay within the realms of humanity, common sense, like,
and avoid self-pity.
Racism is stupid, homophobic, all that stuff can be blocked out and should be blocked out. The sense of humor is very important. You're absolutely right. But my grandmother always said this. She said, always trust a guy with a well-stocked game room. So I trust you. And secondly, it's okay to have haters.
Your grandma says that all the time.
It's okay to have people that, like, disagree with you or don't like you, because, I mean, look at Howard Stern. Like, half of his audience hates him.
Yeah, but it's different now, Darren. It's different now. And I understand exactly what John's saying. There's a thought that goes into something before you post it, before you say it, that that wasn't there. I didn't have this 5-10 years ago, and it's based on the divisiveness of the world that we're living in right now. I agree, the comedy, all of that, and maybe James hasn't learned this lesson yet, but I understand exactly what John is thinking when he is sitting there about a comment that he's going to make on that Facebook post.
Yeah,
I do it. I've written stuff and gone, oh shit, I can't put that out. And I'm a dumb guy. I don't even have a fucking reputation that I need to worry about. I'm still overthinking even comments back to somebody that's on a text service that no one else sees.
Because you're in a reputation-based business, right? Like, the thing about it is that people in media like us No, but our reputation is what gets us paid or not paid. It gets people to listen to you or not listen to you, because reputation is the most important thing on social media right now, your reputation. And if someone sullies that reputation, then you get put over here for an extended period of time, right? And if you have that reputation, then you've got the duty of trying to get back into a position, if you're in media, of working for a media company. Well, guess what? The only people more paranoid than people that do media are media companies that are trying to protect their reputation, right? So you can't win. There's no winning now. And when you talk about that moment of reflection before you put out that tweet, I can't tell you how many times, and John, I'm glad you brought it up with the Facebook page, how many times I've gone to tweet something in support, or gone to tweet something because I've had a really salient, great thought, and I've thought about 100 different possibilities around that tweet, the fallout, and I've deleted it. And it was probably innocuous. I bet you I delete or don't send more tweets than I send, for the very specific purpose that, listen, if I attach my opinion to that guy or this guy, it could be bad for me. Or if I attach my opinion to that opinion, it could be bad for me.
But that's
the way the world is.
Not necessarily a terrible thing. Like this idea, speech should be free from a legal perspective, but human beings are social creatures. And I mean, forget Twitter, forget Facebook. Think of all the times you're with your friends and your family and you want to say something and you don't. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that you don't say those things, because again, like, once you say something about somebody, you can't take it back. And we've learned as a species, we've learned not to say everything that pops in our head. So it would be nice if our truth, if we could, well, this is true to me, so I'm just going to put it, and the mob shouldn't react in a certain way.
But I'm not talking about truth. I'm talking about an opinion. Your story on Jesse Signal is a great story, because he offered an opinion on something that he, the trans community, but he wasn't trans.
And he's a good example of, like, you're talking about fighting back. One principle that I've, sometimes people come to me because they're being mobbed or whatever, and we wrote a book about it, so they asked my opinion. I sometimes tell people, like, either ignore it or push back hard, which Jesse Signals is now doing in regard to these lies that are being told about. But don't do something in the middle, because when you do something in the middle, sometimes you'll look defensive, or you'll just put blood in the water for people to say, oh, we're getting a reaction out of this guy. Mobs tend to be lazy, and they tend to have short attention spans. If all you're doing is either ignoring them or just having a laugh at their expense, they will move on. Not out of principle, but just because, like, if they can extract more pain and attention out of another target, they will move to that other target. It is very much like a Hobbesian process, and mobs are ruthlessly utilitarian on the cost benefit side. They will
lick my sack, douchebag. Not a good response.
I try and avoid that because of the it's a little too chat roulette for me. But
I still like Shut Up James. That was a good one.
But I will say, I generally, for me, it's either ignore, make a joke, or if I do go at them, I go all in. And usually if I go all in, it's because somebody has said something like that's legally problematic, or they have something just like really despicable. But that's rare. Usually if you make a good joke that sort of flips the table on somebody, you don't even have to do anything, because Twitter likes a good laugh and they like a good plot twist. So if you could twist the plot on the mob, people actually, they enjoy that. It's like watching a show, and the predator-prey relationship is switched over. People enjoy good plot twists.
I also
if you,
think
when
it's
you
important.
fire back guns a-blazing,
sorry?
Usually when you do fire back, it's all in.
But it's rare. And by the way, and the reason I've done that in the past was so that I wouldn't have to do it in the future. So, like, there were a few times, like, actually when I left the Walrus, there were a few people, like at BuzzFeed and all these. I mean, interestingly, these people are now out of journalism. What a shame.
Passive aggressive. I love it.
I wish I could find them jobs, but I'm only one person. But there were a few people who came at me in such a way that I really had to come back to them and say, look,
sure,
that's completely inappropriate. And in most cases, those were settled in a gentlemanly manner. But there were some cases, like Tabitha Southey was one so outrageous to me that I actually had to confront her on Twitter in a direct, and which I don't like doing because it's dramatic and it's not.
It's a chick that soaked David.
David Foley for all of his
David
money.
Foley.
Yeah, there's
for all
that
the money.
famous video of Foley telling the world what she's really like. But let's not talk about that because we're better than that. Although
You might be, but I'm not.
people can find the video
Can
if they're
we-
looking for it. Not that I would ever look for it.
Can I bring up another quick comment about the Seth Rogen?
Well, he
Twitter?
he wasn't finished explaining his point. So can you let him finish that?
oh,
And then ask-
sorry.
But if
I
you can do
apologize,
that
John.
effectively once or twice, sorry, I'm talking a lot. But if you
No,
can
no
do it
worries.
effectively once or twice, it's sort of like any other deterrence-based mechanism. You do it once, so you don't have to do it 10 other times.
Yeah.
Because if people see that you have the followers and you have the attitude and you have the wit to make them look like idiots if they come after you in a stupid way, and it's not always going to work, but works most of the time, then you don't have to do it. Then you can be funny and insouciant and casual, because people know if they cross the line with you, you're going to make them look like an idiot. And I don't like making people look like an idiot. It's not something I
Again,
enjoy.
you might be better than that, but I'm not. That's one of my favorite things in the world. If the mute, listen, if I'm not feeling plucky, I just mute. But if I am, and I traditionally do feel fairly plucky, I enjoy it. I enjoy the schadenfreude of making someone question whether or not they should continue with the platform of Twitter. It's one of my
Muting is
favorite
good.
things in the world.
Muting is good. Blocking, I don't like to block. As I say, I don't have a single human being in the world blocked, because what happens is if you block a troll, it's like for them it's a trophy.
Yeah.
But
But listen, if they've got less than 1,000 followers, this is my routine. Okay, I'm going to explain to you guys not just my routine, but my philosophy behind replying to trolls and overly woke morons and extreme righties. My tact is this: if you don't have more than 1,000 followers, I'm not responding because there's nothing in it for me. Right?
I don't know.
That is like Twitter elitism.
That is,
It really
that is at least. I've had the most amazing conversations with people with 10 followers, and the most idiotic conversations with, I don't want to single out Seth Rogen, but he has 9 million followers, and it's not like I was debating against Noel Coward or anything like that. I mean, it's like, so there's no proportionate relationship between the quality of a dialogue.
I know, but if someone's a real piece of shit and they lead with "go fuck yourself" or you lefty scum, or because I get called all of it, right and left, because I love to judge things and talk about things based on the merits of things. There's no identity that feeds into my opinion. Nothing. I could care less who votes for who, or who likes what, or who has sex with who. It doesn't fucking matter to me. If a woman does something wrong, you call that person on the merits of what they did. If it's a guy, if it's a girl, if it's a black person, Chinese person, I really don't care. If someone does something that's untoward and it's worth writing about, I'll write about it. But I never include race in it, ever. And I never include gender in it, or to say this is what happens when you get these kinds of people together. This stuff always happens. Yeah. But at the same time, when someone's coming after me, and I know that they're degenerates, because you can tell the difference. Like the vitriol, when as soon as it comes out, you're like, that's a mute. Or if they've got more than 1,000 followers, I'll engage. But if it's someone who's just, having a normal discourse, I'll engage with anybody. What I'm saying is, if you don't have more than 1,000 followers and you are a true turd burglar, I'm not going to engage.
Is that a technical term in the industry?
Pretty sure.
Okay, Bonafide. Okay.
Yeah, pretty sure. You can use it if you want.
I have, by the way, one of the best pieces we ever ran on Quillette was a guy who presented to me like a soi-disant turd burglar, to use your idiom. And
hearing you say turd burglar was hilarious.
But he came at me in this really aggressive way, and he was somebody who I kind of vaguely knew from Canadian literary circles. And even saying the words Canadian literary circles makes me like an insufferable douchebag, I realize.
Sort of.
Yeah. So, but anyway, this guy, he came at me so hard. This was like a couple of years ago. But it was like, it was way over the top and it was performative. And I could tell he was having like a manic episode. And I actually said, dude, I'd love to continue this, what we're doing, but I think you're in crisis or something. And it turns out he was in crisis, and he got help. And then when he came back, he told all his woke friends to screw off, and he wrote for Quillette. His name is Will Johnson. So that's a guy who I don't know how many followers he had at the time, but I'm kind of glad that I kind of stepped away from that, but also messaged him. I didn't just block him. And this happens very rarely, but it was, and I think one of the reasons I think he indicated that maybe he took me seriously, or maybe it was one of the factors of him realizing that his woke subculture wasn't doing him any favors. Is like, I think there were a lot of people who were egging him on, but I was the nominal focus of his attack, and I was the guy who said, like, dude, I think you need some help right now.
Yeah.
And I wasn't saying it in like, dude, get help, like in the sarcastic way that 99% of the time people use that phrase on Twitter using it. And he did get help. Yeah. And the guy is now, I met him here in Toronto. He came to visit me, and I wish this sort of thing happened more often, but it happens enough that like my faith in humanity has not entirely been consumed by the corrosive spirit of social media.
Good for you.
You're like the opposite of that, though, too. Are you also a person who thinks that it is a mistake to apologize if you stood by your principles and people are mobbing you for it? I ask that because the first, and I'm not name dropping, this is who taught me this. When I was trying to get Jordan Peterson for an interview, I think in late 2016, he recognized my name from the mobbing that I got for this piece that I wrote for Huffington Post, and told me in a message, do whatever you need to do. Like, I was in the midst of it. I was getting death threats and everything. And he was like, do whatever you need to do, but just make sure you never apologize. Just don't apologize.
Yeah, but there are times you should apologize if it's legit. Like, I apologized. I remember quite clearly. I apologized to one of the editors at the National Post, this is when I was at the Walrus, and I'd gone over the line. Like, I'd just been too personal in the way I attacked him, and I apologized publicly. And I remember when I apologized, he didn't know quite how to take it. He thought it was like the setup to something. Like, I apologize
because it's so never happened.
Well, no, but that it was like some sort of elaborate performance art or something.
Sorry for making you look bad.
Yeah, that it was a setup to a gag, and then like it became clear that no, I was sincere, and people were a little weirded out by it because usually you see confessions or apologies on Twitter all the time, but they usually have the quality of like these glassy-eyed statements that when people have to apologize in show trials. Like, I apologize to the party for being a Trotskyist deviationist. I promise to redouble my efforts.
That banjo player recently, his apology was insane. It was like someone held a gun to his head.
Oh, from that British band.
Yes,
Mumford.
Because he promoted Andy No's book about Antifa,
right.
And then that he hurt a lot of people by doing so somehow.
So so those were no stranger to those apologies, which are like super creepy because it's kind of like, please let me back into your cult. I'll do anything. I'll say anything. Those things people just roll their eyes, as well they should. But I'm talking about real apologies, like the kind you delivered as the show began. That was nice. That was nice.
You know what? I've this is you started the podcast by saying you don't hang out with academics like us. But I've been doing a lot of reading, and the reading I've been doing has been supplemental reading about Stoicism and philosophy. And accountability in Stoicism is like numero uno, right? You are accountable for the things you do wrong, and if you fuck up, apologize for them, move on. A couple weeks ago, I took a strip off the teachers being pissy about their March break being in April. And I was wrong. And 2 weeks later, I said, hey guys, listen, if you're a teacher, I apologize. And here's why. And I ended with, I'm sorry, because it's good for me, right? It's humility. And if there's a lack of anything on social media and in entertainment today, it's humility. It's the ability to say you're wrong when you're wrong, and the ability to say, I want to know more. So you have people on your show, or you talk to people, or you read. And when you educate yourself as to the humility behind the apology or being accountable, and that's just my path. My path is I'm very interested in philosophy, and I'm shocked that something an emperor said 2,000 years ago makes more sense to me about how to be today, how to live with virtue today, than it does anything else that I've read, whether it's religion or whether it's a support group or AA. Nothing has come close to the understanding that I have today, which I've gotten through reading the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And it's very, very simple to me, which is the apology or the act of the apology. If you're fucking sorry for what you said, be sorry for it. But to James's point, I'm not going to apologize to someone because what I said upset them and their narrative that they've been trying to push. That will never fucking happen, because the other part of stoicism is, listen, you stand on the principles, you stand on the virtues, and if you didn't do something wrong, then there's no need to apologize, and that no longer is your problem. But the problem is there are millions and there are billions of people out there that want to make everything their problem.
I'll stick with you, James. Fuck them. I'm not apologizing at all.
Well, you don't apologize.
These guys are way
did anything wrong. That's the key to that.
You're
exactly
way,
right.
These people are way further ahead in their personal development than you and I. So,
well, you know
as
what?
an American, that's the only American in the group here. How do I tie this apology thread into Canadianism? Because we seem to think that all Canadians just say they're sorry all the time about anything.
It's not true.
Not on Twitter.
Just watch South Park and Family Guy and any other comic strip that it's all Canadians, or Anchorman 2, the big scene there. Sorry. So it was it's a thing.
By the way, I want to say that what Marcus Aurelius did in Germany, he actually died on military campaign.
He did,
and his son took over. His
Commodus.
horrible son. Yeah, probably one of the worst emperors in Roman history, which is ironic given that Marcus Aurelius is the archetypal philosopher emperor, and his son was like just a gigantic, like a stain on history. Marcus Aurelius, himself was led bloodthirsty campaigns against Germanic tribes, and I think should probably be canceled. He's probably has been canceled in Germany, and rightly so. So I'd like to distance.
So no one should watch Gladiator either. Right?
I was just going to say I get all my Marcus Aurelius history from Gladiator. So
I'd like to distance myself from the historical legacy of Marcus Aurelius. Sorry, but I'd also, by the way, just in terms
not
of
feeling so bad about being in James's canoe now.
Just so you know, the Roman Empire was fucking hilarious. Like everybody killed everybody. Everybody had sex with each other's sisters. So all these, like, Marcus Aurelius did bad things, but bad people can say good things. And I guess my point is that it's entirely possible for good people with good intentions to get wrapped up in some of the shit along the way as well. And we've seen it, right?
If I could say something about the teachers thing, one of the ways to maintain humility is to have as many points of contact with real life as possible. So like if all you knew about Ontario teachers consisted of press releases and tweets and stuff from their unions or from OISE, which is the Teachers College at University of Toronto, you would think that teachers were a bunch of like highly, ideologically inflexible, selfish, elitist.
Babies.
Yeah, I mean, you would think the worst of them based on the institutional pronouncements from their unions and their teachers' colleges. They would seem like, very woke. But then because I have 3 kids in school, including one just at a school around the corner, I meet teachers and they're great people. And I can actually see how they're trying to work with these hyper woke curricula that they're given. And, they take what's good from them, and sometimes maybe they glaze over some of the stuff, which is no one should be teaching. And then they add stuff from their own knowledge. Like, I've actually had very good experiences with TDSB teachers, and because of that real life experience, and not just being a parent, but also like everything, like going out as being a shopper, playing sports, every aspect of my private life, I try and realize, like, when we talk about the police, like, fuck the police, defund the police. Like, I know police officers. On my nephew's hockey team, one of the dads is a police officer. And the idea that this guy, he happens to be in Peel region, he happens to be a black guy. The idea that this guy is some sort of like bloodthirsty predator who's just like can't wait to beat the crap out of some minority person falsely accused of whatnot, like, it's just insane. And the more people like that you have in your life, whether it's police officers, or gender studies prof. I happen not to have any neighbors who are gender studies profs, but I bet if I had one, he'd probably be a nice guy, even if I completely disagreed with his ideology.
But that's the thing about occupying that space between MAGA and ultra woke, though, is because I think that there's an automatic reflex for us, because we've seen what it's like to be reflexively racist and reflexively prejudicial from both of those sides. That
reflexively
there's like this new window in my mind that opened up maybe 7-8 years ago. That is like, okay, when you hear someone trash cops, make sure you don't trash all cops, because that's ridiculous. Police officers, just like John was just saying, teachers, same thing, even politicians. same thing. Like I know
Wow,
a few.
hold on,
I know
hold
well.
on.
There's a little less of them that are probably
Pump the
likable, but
brakes.
there are likable ones. There's this guy in the beaches, Nathaniel Erskine Smith. I voted for him the last time I voted in Toronto before I moved up here, and he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He said that if he disagrees with the Liberal Party, even though he was a Liberal, then he will vote against them, and he did. He's voted against his own party like 49 times or something like that. Like he's broken records for bucking his own party. So there are, I mean, I think John raises a good point. I just think that there's a good way to analyze groups of people, and there's a bad way, and the best way is to try to do it in person.
I like to use stereotypes
and vague generalizations. Yeah, they go well. They go well. People love
Jonathan,
it.
I wanted to ask you really quick, since we have you here. I don't know how long you're staying for, but the first anniversary of Christy Blatchford's death came and went not too long ago, and I don't think I've ever asked you how close you guys were. I know you knew her professionally, but can you maybe just share a couple of thoughts on what she was all about? Because I feel like she is so sorely missed right now in Canadian media.
Yeah. So one of the proudest things I've done at Quillette, and just to reemphasize, there's 5 or 6 of us who work there. I think originally I was described as the Canadian editor, but I think now we're just all called editors. But one of my proudest accomplishments is I saw Christy Blatchford give a speech, I think it was in early 2020, about the importance of due process and the importance of civil liberties and the importance of classically liberal values. And she gave this amazing speech and talked about how actually it was often conservatives who were responsible for the erosion of due process, because they were so obsessed with like fetishizing victim impact statements that it sort of trials became performative, and it wasn't always about giving fair due process to the accused. And to some extent, like progressives actually like took that ball from the conservatives. But anyway, she's one of the few people who can say a pox on both your houses in terms of extremists on the left and the right. And if anybody's in front of a computer, we devoted one of our podcasts, I think it's podcast 78, and the title, I just looked it up, it's called Award-Winning Journalist Christy Blatchford on the Importance of Due Process. And the reason, I'm not trying to drive traffic to the site, except to the extent that that speech she gave is just such a perfect encapsulation of her ethos as a reporter. The idea that I don't care if you're a scumbag, I don't care if you're the most respectable and genteel member of society and is on the board of 17 different charities. I'm going to approach my journalism in regard to you the same way. I'm going to exhibit the same skepticism about your statements. I'm not going to believe the X. The idea that a whole class of humanity never lies. She never embraced that, nor should anyone. Human beings are imperfect creatures. Many of us lie all the time for all sorts of reasons, or for no reason at all. That's what human beings. That's what we do. We're fallen creatures. We also published the transcript of what she wrote as an article. And I remember reading that as an editor. I was like, yes, this is the kind of journalism I want. People who don't just believe someone because they're demographically or ideologically copacetic. People who take the same attitude of skepticism to every claim they hear, right or left, look for the facts. And she embodied that, which is why it's interesting. You can always tell who the cultists are by the people who object to the reporters who take the attitude I just described. And if you go online, you'll see lots of progressives. There was one guy, you talk about, what was the douche monkey, or what was the term you were using? Dirt monkey?
Turd burglar.
Yes. So
douche knuckle. I think I threw it around.
Actually, I like douche monkey.
Dirt monkey. Dirt monkey, douche knuckle,
whatever.
Yeah.
So there was the one guy, and I'm not going to say his name. He's like Voldemort. He, like, on the anniversary of Christy Blatchford's death, like, not only did he sort of like do a little jig of joy when she died, but on the anniversary of his death, of her death, he tweeted, "Oh yeah, this is the anniversary of Christy Blatchford's death. Here's the article I wrote about how, like, I don't mind that she's gone." And I remember I tweeted back at him, like, is this something you're going to do like every anniversary of Christy Blatchford's death? Like, is this your shtick now? It's like, I'm the guy who tweets about how I don't care that Christy Blatchford is dead every year. And I was glad to see that even a lot of progressives were disgusted by how lurid it was. But there were a surprising number I don't know that Jesse Brown does this, but a surprising number of Canadaland types who, like, even in death, could not restrain themselves from making disgusting comments, which those comments did is betray how ideologically torqued and shallow their understanding of a journalist's role in society really is.
All
they want is cheerleaders for their position. They want people who ignore facts that are inconvenient to their side, and they're cultists. And I'm so sorry that Christie is not around to skewer these people, which she was also very good at doing.
She was also the kind of person that would say, well, I guess that's free speech. So she would even say, you know, I support your right to say those things about me.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
And what you said earlier about the police officer that, you know, I guess I have that example with Christy, because I moved to a neighborhood that she lived in the annex, and I lived beside her for 8 years or something. So we saw each other all the time. And when I first met her, I was a typical early 20s progressive. I didn't like conservatives, this, that, and the other thing. And she asked me about, she's like, oh, I saw an article in the Sun. And I was like, I don't read the Sun. And she looked at me funny and she's like, why not? And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't like their journalism. And she's like, well, you need to start reading the Sun. You need to start reading the Post. You need to start reading the Star. You need to start reading the Globe. And she's like, you have to read all of it so that you can actually have an informed opinion and not just walk around with a reflexive dismissal of one of the publications that you should be reading. And she was her that taught me that. Like that, I wouldn't even, I would credit her for basically making me grow by basically calling, listen, stupid, go fucking read this magazine. She was so awesome. She used to just like, she had the mouth of a trucker, and it was great because she was this tiny little thing. But she taught me that, and I just think it's too bad. And I think people misunderstood that she didn't slam Jack Layton on the day that he died, but she wrote a column, you know, about how that she thought that the admiration of him was a little overdone in his funeral, and they used sort of that as like a good reason to slam her when she died.
I don't know, but first of all, she's 100% right, because Jack Layton was my MP, and I was actually friendly with Jack Layton. He actually helped me out a speed bump on my street of all things, even though it's hardly federal jurisdiction. I like Jack Layton, and yeah, Christy Blatchford was calling out the sentimental cultism, which a lot of people did, including Peter Scowen, who was at the National Post at the time and is a man of the left. He called it out in regard to Justin Trudeau's performance at his dad's funeral, where, like everyone in Canada, this is going back 20 years, but people may remember that everyone in Canada was kind of embarrassed to say what they were thinking, which is that shtick that happened.
Every pirouette.
It was over the top. Like it was, I mean, it's possible to be tacky at a funeral. Just because it's a funeral doesn't mean. And
it's
and
totally true.
When I say that, I like Justin Trudeau.
Oh my God, that's
I've
funny.
met, you know, I worked with Justin Trudeau on his book. I thought he was a nice guy, and people say he's dumb. He's not dumb. He's a smart guy, and I like him. But that what he did at his dad's funeral was over the top. And there was one guy, to my knowledge, who said it, which is this guy Peter Scowen, who wrote a column about it in the Post. And when he wrote it, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what everyone is thinking, but no one wanted to say it.
You know, it's funny because if that and what we're talking about feeds into, I don't know if you followed the Gordon Miller TSN stuff with Barstool Sports the other day. But you know, guy Gordon Miller TSN, he's asked to go on a podcast with that's owned by Barstool Sports. He's like, you know what, I like those guys, but I don't want to go on that show. Then he goes on to say why, which is he calls the platform misogynist, said they promote non-consensual sex, said they promote a bunch of other things like racism. And to me, that was virtue signaling.
Yeah.
Right. To me, that was
media. If you don't want to go in media, don't do it. But don't try and score points on it, because I get it. Yeah.
No, but then and it goes to your point. It's entirely possible that good people, Gord might be a great guy. I don't know him, but it's entirely possible that good people do things that are questionable, right? Just like it was entirely possible that Justin Trudeau at the time was being over the top. It's entirely possible that someone who is a good person can virtue signal. Like these are, you know, but then again, we judge those people eternally for it. It's not like something that just pops up.
My favorite example is James Brown. You know, at the Grammys, James Brown got a lot of, you know, they talked about James Brown's legacy because he was one of the most brilliant musicians known to the 20th century. James Brown was not a saint. You know, he didn't go slaughter Germanic tribes like your hero Marcus Aurelius. But, you know,
Well, we don't know that he didn't.
We don't. Yeah, to our knowledge, he never waged a campaign against the Alamanite.
You're not going to live this one down, Dean.
Yeah. I'm just going to finish every sentence with like your hero, Marcus.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, but like with a guy like that, we can listen to his music and say, is this a guy who maybe like I'd want,
babysitting my kids?
I was trying to think whether that'd be racist. I don't think it's racist. I think,
No.
Would I want him to be like the executor for my estate? Maybe not. But is he one of the most brilliant minds who has ever existed artistically, or, forget the word artistically. He was just like an absolute flat out brilliant guy. Sure. And deserves to be honored, regardless of all the crap he may have done in his personal life. And that's the attitude.
Now you're opening a different can of worms between being a morally good person and art.
Yeah.
And being able to separate the two things.
It used to be the opposite. We used to take it for granted that, Tolstoy was horrible to his wife. And there are certain artists who, like, you'd be disappointed if you found out they were good people, because like their idea of like their entire moral universe was contained on their canvas. And they were just, they didn't care about bourgeois conventions and fidelity and all that other stuff. Like that was just part of the bohemian artist lifestyle. I'm not saying it's good, but that was kind of like went with the artist métier. But now it's the opposite, that like, unless you secured consent in writing before you kissed every girl in high school or tweeted things, didn't use the right hashtag. Look at this poor woman, Alexi McAmmond, 28-year-old black woman, got fired and then quickly thrown out the window. She's no longer got her job at Teen Vogue because they discovered these tweets from when she was 18. Mm-hmm. She was 18 years old. Think about the crap that people put on their social media feeds when they're.
She was a black. I thought she was a white girl.
No,
black.
No. Why would she care? Why would anyone care? Because she didn't even spell the N word with the ER. She spelled it with an A. Why would anyone care?
She was attacking Asians, and she had the horrible misfortune of all of this coming to light around the time of the Atlanta tragedy. And this, if you're a 28-year-old black woman being held to account because of crap you tweeted almost half a lifetime ago. She's 20 years old. This happened 10 years ago. And then now it turns out that one of her accusers at Teen Vogue, one of the editors there, herself used a variant of the N-word.
That's what I'm thinking of.
DM exchange. Like,
wow.
We should ask her what she thinks of all the radio stations playing Michael Jackson.
Okay, so that's another thing, is like we sort of have agreed to give Michael Jackson a pass, and of course I would give Michael Jackson a pass. He's an absolute genius, but like if I'm making a list of people who would not be babysitting my kids, like
he's at the top.
I don't know if he's at the top, but
he's at the top.
He's on it. He's on it. He's on the list.
He's in the top 3.
But he's still, he's
the trust is monkey more.
He's still Michael Jackson.
I will say this. One of the parts, when I came to know who you were through the dog shampoo story, your mom came.
That's how I want the point of entry to be to my oeuvre, is through the dog shampoo. Yes, please continue. I'm glad that was your point of entry.
Well, no, my point was this: is your mom came to your defense.
Yes,
like your mom shot out this thing and took a big dump on Jesse Brown. Now I like it. Before I didn't. And then I questioned your mom getting involved in your business on Twitter, and then your mom's friends all hammered me, like all
as
of
they should have, Dean.
As they should have.
Okay, so
all of them hammered me, and then I thought it was funny. I'm like, whatever. But then the interesting part of that whole thing is that right after your mom tweeted her support for you and that Jesse Brown thing, your tweet back was her which is funny because you're both adults, right? You're like, thanks, Mom. I got this.
Yeah.
I love it. I needed to ask about the mom thing. I've been hanging on to it for a while.
Your ice cream money and you came running to your mom.
Thanks, Mom. I got it.
So that's the thing. So that when my mom, bless her soul, who just got vaccinated, by the way.
Good for her.
When she tweeted that was around the time I was like, all right, this,
This out of hand.
Fonzie is sailing over the Shark Tank, and I actually don't care where Fonzie lands. And I think I tweeted, I said, yeah, thanks, Mom, but I got this.
Yeah, you did.
Which turned out, like, I remember I revisited it a week later. It turned out to be like a really popular tweet, because and also just showed people like, God, this is surreal and far from exhibiting self-pity.
That you and your mom weren't a Twitter team, which would have been death for your career.
Mom, stop.
So the truth is that I think I ended up talking like 2 days later about some completely other subject, and I think I did say to her, like, I love that you want to defend me, but you know, the Seth Rogen guy is a little weird. Let's just like, you know, we don't necessarily need to mingle our brands on the Seth Rogen file, is how I put it politely.
Is that what you said? We don't need to commingle our brands on the Seth Rogen file.
About my mom is my mom.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, she's a journalist too.
Anyone say, Jonathan?
Yeah, and I don't have to like exhibit this sort of like waspy, you know, walking around on eggshells type attitude with her. Like, I mean, we do have like sort of a stereotypically Jewish, like candid form of discussion. And so if she's tweeting something I don't like, which in this case I didn't mind, like I thought it was funny. But like, I mean, there have been times where like I've tweeted, this is going back a couple of years, where I tweet something and she torques it up and she's like, and that's why we need to, and I'm like, whoa, let's ratchet that back. And I'll have to say, like, you know,
she's just punching it up, right? Making it more entertaining, John.
She's way more conservative than me. Like, I'm not a real conservative. I'm kind of this disaffected liberal who just doesn't like woke culture, where she's an actual conservative. And so
I was going to ask you about that, about how, because it seems like your circle of professional friends at the very least are pretty conservative. And I was surprised when you got hired at the Walrus. I was one of those people that was like, okay, I guess they're going into a less of a left-wing direction. And this is, you know, because I never thought of you as this rabid conservative, but I always thought of you, you know, you were the editor of the comment section of the National Post. I thought you were a conservative, you know?
Yeah, although
but back in the day, now I understand.
I just thought you were conservative because of the glasses. That was it. And all the games behind you. Now I just
Dean, you want to take a shot of your glasses?
I should say that these frames are empty. They're here just to make me look intellectual.
Okay.
And for a while, I thought there were strings on the end of your glasses, but those are your headphones.
Yes. Yeah, to avoid feedback. So, yeah, well, when I was at the National Post, I was on the comment section, I was the in-house liberal. And when I was at the Walrus, I was the in-house conservative. I mean, there is a sort of...
You always need one.
But you know what it is? It's like when you are in an environment and you see people drinking the Kool-Aid, there's a certain sort of person, and James, I think you're one of them, who's like, I don't want to drink the Kool-Aid. And you want to drink any flavor of Kool-Aid except the one you see people drinking. And that's the way I kind of was at the National Post. And then at the Walrus, I saw these people drinking the woke Kool-Aid. And I was like, you know what? That National Post Kool-Aid, I could go for some of that right now. and then I realized that I didn't want to drink any Kool-Aid. And so now I'm doing like kind of like hipster margaritas at Quillette, to extend the metaphor, where it's more like kind of an artisanal thing, right? like sort of raw food type. So
if you could turn your brand of journalism into a restaurant chain, you would be the Panera.
Whoa, Panera. That's a little upscale for me. I mean, to put this in context, 2 days ago, I composed a really long tweet about the polar bear donut at Tim Hortons. No, it's just, if you look at my thread,
great segue into that pizza.
I saw it. You were quite upset there were no polar bear donuts. I don't even know what the fuck they are.
So upset is a strong word. I would say I was flummoxed by the fact that they had this holiday themed polar bear donut, and then I kept asking for it, and they said, well, the holiday's over. Like in January, we got rid of it. And then suddenly, like in March, I was at this Tim Hortons, and there it is, staring me in the face with its polar bear eyes. And I was like, "Give me the donut. I want to eat the donut." And I said, "So what?" I said to the woman, it's like some 19-year-old says, "So what holiday are we celebrating?" She was like, "I don't know." I said, "Like, do you want the donut or not?" It's like, "Yeah, I want the donut," but it still says holiday-themed polar bear donut. So I think it might be Passover. But I'm not
couldn't help it.
They still have leftover stock from Christmas because of the pandemic. So
or it just could be some like MLK Day thing. I don't know. But it's an amazing.
The bear might be the wrong bear.
The best. Yeah, you know what? That would be actually very
Grizzly.
It's not. It's okay. So the MLK thing. Let's take that off the whiteboard.
Yeah.
That's not part of it.
You get in trouble for that, dude. Yeah. I'm already canceling you in my mind.
It's also not Pesach. I should say that there's probably no donut at Tim Hortons as Pesach for anyone who's following Pesach. But I have no idea. To this day, I have no idea what holiday is now being celebrated with the arrival of this donut? All of which, this is so long-winded, all of which to say, like, that is my baseline for like gastronomic quality, is the Tim Hortons, Wendy, Popeyes, McDonald's.
All right.
Nexus and Panera.
All right, so you're not the Panera of journalists. You're the
Panera, that's where they serve you soup in a hollowed out piece of bread.
Yeah,
which I find disgusting, and I would never go back because to me that's like a gimmicky thing.
Well, see, I feel like you're shitting on my delicacies. I feel like you're crapping on my cuisine.
It's not a delicacy; it's a gimmick. It's the same. It's soup. You're ruining a piece of bread instead of using a bowl.
But dude, when you're done the soup, you have the benefit of the bowl that you can eat.
No one eats the bowl.
That's well, you should eat the bowl. Why doesn't it? I eat the bowl, and there are people laughing at me when I finish the bowl in those places.
You eat the bowl?
Eat the bowl all the time.
That's disgusting.
If a salad comes in a taco shell, I'll eat that fucking shell too.
You're not allowed to
watch out.
You're not allowed to give me Arby's shame anymore. That's it. No more fucking Arby's shame. Stops right here today.
Listen,
you bull
before
leader.
I let you go, John. Before I let you go, Jon Kay, editor of Quillette.
I knew we'd get to the real issues. I knew that after all that,
you got to tell me what is going on with all those board games behind you, dude. I don't judge, but like, if my kids say to me, "Hey, Dad, let's play Monopoly," I'm like, forget it, because the rules are fucked. My kids have fucked the rules. Like, I play a game of Sorry now with my kids, and the rules are so messed up, I lose every time because there's no instructions. And so I've come to hate board games over this period of time. But you appear to enjoy them.
Yeah, I have a chapter. So I wrote a book, co-authored a book about board games in 2019, and I have a chapter about why Monopoly is a bad game. And we also talk about the bastardization of the rules, like this whole idea where you put money in free parking.
Yeah.
It's like well known among Monopoly purists that is just, it's a house rule. It's not part of the actual rules, and it's this bastardization of the rules is one of the many reasons that Monopoly is a terrible game. And it ruins.
Because everybody's got their own rules. You go and play with people, and you're like,
that's not the reason. The reason is, as I argue, is it's an example of what in engineering we call an unstable dynamical system, where it doesn't revert to an equilibrium. Like the rich get richer in Monopoly and the poor get poorer, and there's no mechanism to restore balance to the game like there is in modern Euro games. Like in Settlers of Catan, which is now known as Catan, you have the robber. And the robber is an equalizing factor. The robber is an icon of social justice, because what happens is the robber is typically placed on the player who's winning and robs them to give the other players a chance. There's no robber in Monopoly. So if you don't like Monopoly, I would suggest Catan or any of the couple of dozen games behind me. But I tend to go in for like, I don't go in for like so-called party games where like you put a hat on your head and you have to guess a word. Like those. I go in for more like military simulations and stuff like that.
Pictionary,
Pratigo, games like that. Chess.
Chess is a great game. I wish I were better at it. Like my favorite game is a game called Advanced Squad Leader, which is like my jam, as the kids say. But I also like Euro games with an economic theme, like 18xx rail building games and stuff like that. This will be meaningless to anybody who still talks about Stratego.
Yeah.
But if there's anyone listening to this who's in this subculture, DM me. My DMs are open. Love talking about games, food, due process, all those things.
Dude, we've really appreciated having you here today. I've enjoyed this conversation. I've enjoyed listening to everybody
James.
Here today. Yeah, thanks to James.
James is the one who James, I'm guessing you lobbied for me to be on the show.
I did. Yeah, I did.
You know, that book I sent you is worth every penny.
You know, can I just say, yeah, and this is before Putin did it to Biden.
You just call him
Putin, whatever.
Yeah.
So he writes, I don't know if you can read that, but it says, stay healthy. You probably can't read that, but it's there. And then literally I got the book, and then a day later, the big line of the day from Vladimir Putin was that he told Biden to make sure you stay healthy.
That was weird, That I did write in your book. And
yeah, thank you for the thoughtful inscription, by the way.
I think really yours was less of a veiled threat, though.
I could
stay
I
healthy.
Think what to say. I'm so bad. I'm so bad at book inscriptions.
You should have written. I'm sorry, I don't remember meeting you, Jonathan Kay.
No, but I remember I think I wrote in someone's book, keep your feet on the ground, but keep reaching for the stars, which someone later told me is what Casey Kasem said.
Casey Kasem, yeah.
Yeah. So like, I was literally plagiarizing a dead guy.
You gotta go with best wishes. It's the greatest. Like, if I ever had someone come up to me and go, yeah.
See,
that offends my
atheistic
part of my brain.
Missed opportunity if you don't use Steppenwolf lyrics, in my opinion.
It was Tommy Lee. Tommy Lee told me once, he's like, yeah, if you ever have to sign an autograph for somebody and you ask their name, it's because he loves people too. He like wants to make people feel good when they ask their name. It was advice I got from like 20 years ago. He goes, what you do, dude, is you ask for their name and then you tell them how cool their name is, and then you write their name and then you put best wishes and then you just scribble your fucking signature. You can't go wrong because someone's like, the guy knew my name, he wrote my name in this. Just do best wishes from now on. You're fine.
That's solid. That's good.
Right?
Oh man.
Or enjoy the magic carpet ride, John.
That's a good one. Or go fuck yourself. Or shut up, James. Shut up, James is my favorite.
You guys are pros the way you're weaving in all these motifs. Like I just, it's
what's a motif?
And you thought you weren't hanging out with academics.
This is the Noel Coward experience I lacked with Seth Rogen. So thank you.
Of course it is. Yes, you're welcome. Jon Kay, editor of Quillette magazine, at Jon Kay, JONKAY on Twitter. Really appreciate you taking time and just imparting some knowledge with us and kind of kicking around some things that everybody seems to struggle with today. Absolutely brilliant. Really appreciate you being here, bud.
Best wishes, guys. Best wishes.
Best wishes.
Stay healthy, John.
Stay healthy.
Shut up, James.
I get the sarcasm. Thanks, John. That's Jon Kay. There you go, boys. Let's go to the wide shot here, Chris, so I can see all the lads. There you go. What a guy. What a great guy.
That was awesome. Yeah.
You know what?
I guess I'm your showrunner now. I guess I'm the showrunner now.
He approaches
Blundell show.
Sure. He approaches what is very triggering from a lot of people from like pure common sense and just chill, right? And being an academic, I think that's pretty much the only way you can do it, because you're going to ruffle feathers when you ask questions, and that's what academics do. They ask questions and then say, because here's why I'm asking, and here are the examples. Like it's awesome and refreshing talking to someone that's in the heat of it, because we sit around and get angry, right? You know, and when we sit and talk about cancel culture, we sit here and go, fuck those guys, fuck those dicks, those guys are pussies, fuck them, the woke culture, fuck the right. It's just a bunch of fucks. But when you sit down and you talk to someone who's like in it every day, I weave in and out of social media, and if I say something that upsets people, it sets me back sometimes if the fucking hatred is too much. But you know, when you talk to him in regards to like, fuck, Seth Rogen's never come after me, right? When someone with millions of followers comes after you, traditionally you're like, fuck, I probably did something stupid, right? But he didn't do anything wrong and handled it like a pro. Whereas I would have said, I'm going to find out where Seth Rogen lives and I'm going to take a shit in his flower bed, right?
And I would not discourage that.
But it's also interesting how different he is from what you thought he might have been.
John, yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, not knowing much about him, I find it even more disturbing that we live in a world with so little grasp of common sense. Why is what he does so difficult for people to comprehend?
Because we're polarized. Because we're totally polarized.
And it's not the comprehension, it's the fact that I think people see these keywords in tweets and headlines, right? Or they'll take someone else's word for it. Mm-hmm. What James does so well, and give you full marks, because you've been a huge proponent of, like, let's keep the marketplace open, right? Let's keep talking. Let's have people on that you might not agree with, or you've had people on in the past, or people that have gone through something, and let's get their stories. Let's talk to them about the merits of what's happening, as opposed to saying, let's jump on with Seth Rogen because Seth Rogen might retweet me if I agree with him.
Yeah.
And so when you take time, it's fucking really gross. And you know what grossed me out? Because I did it, right? Like, I was one of those cats that jumped on and shit on the poor dude, you know? And then when you educate yourself and you read and you listen and you find out about the person and what they're really saying and what they're about, the conversation's very different. Because all you want to do is be able to make sense of what's going on. That's all anybody wants to do. I want to make sense of where I can operate, how I can be, right? And people just can't be right now because of this. So talking to him in those terms and then listening to him, It's like the Heisman to Jesse Brown. Not the Heisman. What do you call it? Shitting on Jesse Brown, crapping on Jesse Brown in a nice way. Like he didn't go all the way. Didn't go all in on the guy like everybody else does.
Yeah,
he's got more reason to do it than anybody.
He has a good knack at like really exposing the person that is sort of attacking him as being the crazy one. You know, he's always just like, okay, Jesse, you all good now?
There are people out there that are smart enough to undress individuals, and he's one of them. Like he can knock you down with very little effort just because he's that much smarter than you, and he's using something like common sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Plus, he has economy of words down to a science. Like there's never any fat on his tweets.
Yeah,
you know?
That's a good point. That's a very good observation.
He had a great demeanor. He had a great flow. He was knowledgeable. He seemed to choose his words very carefully before he said them.
Hair was incredible.
There was an even tone the whole way. He didn't get too hot. He didn't get too cold. It was just nice and even the whole time.
Like, I haven't got a lot of hair left, but if I had hair, I think I'd be trying that Arm & Hammer. Like he had nice flow on him for an older dude, right?
You got to go get some. Ask him.
Great.
About
I didn't know until today that he actually used the shampoo. I thought the joke was I know, but I thought the joke was the dog shampoo existed in his bathroom. It was for his dog, and I thought the joke was he didn't know it was dog shampoo, even though it had a dog picture on it. And that was the self-deprecating joke. I didn't know until today that he actually used the shampoo.
I think he is also blind as a fucking bat. So you're in the shower without your glasses on, you can't see shit, and you're like just going, and away you go. He was probably using it for, like I said, like he said, for a month.
But he didn't use his terrible sight as an excuse, though. He just kind of stayed, like, not once in any of those tweets did he go, "Listen, I can't fucking see." So it's not like I'm making this up. Like I can't.
And the only way he got found out is when his wife caught him pissing on the rug,
dragging his ass.
Otherwise, he would have gone out, for many more months washing his hair.
Do you know what dog?
Whatever it is, it's working. It looks great.
Speaking of which, do you guys know a dog peed on my face yesterday?
What?
Yeah.
Is that
Are you dating a Portuguese woman,
Dean, or what? You sharing? You oversharing?
It begs the question: why was your dog's wiener near your face?
That's a great question. So, my ex-wife has a dog who I'm in love with. His name's Sam. Great dog. He's I don't know. He's red.
The dog. I don't know what kind of dog he is, but he's a great
long
dog.
ears. A hound. He's a hound. But he loves me. This dog loves me. I'm of the opinion that all dogs love me. Like when I go for a walk in the park, which I do every day, dogs turn and look at me when I walk by, and I'm like, I got the dog thing. Dogs love me. So this dog comes out.
Dean, they also like all brands of peanut butter.
Yeah, I know.
Don't flatter yourself.
We're gonna go there.
So anyway, the dog comes out and he sees me and he goes nuts and he pisses, right? And he lays down when he pisses. But as he rolls over on his back like this, the hose gets me and it goes right across my face, in my mouth, in my nose. I have piss all over my face. And I'm standing there.
Came up 6 feet?
Oh, dude, no, I was bent down to pet him. Like I was like
down.
and then I'm like this, and the dog sprays me with piss across the face, and it's in my mouth, and I'm like this.
Jesus, that's awful.
And I'm like this. And my ex-wife's at the door. I go, "Can you pass me a towel?" Nope.
No. Oh, she's your ex-wife.
So I tell, yeah. So I look at my kid. I go, "Hey, buddy, can you go get me a towel and wet it? And I just need to wipe the piss off my face." Yeah. Wow. First time ever. I've never.
Well, now you have even a stronger connection out of that dog.
Dogs love me.
Jesus,
that's my point.
Christ. It's awful.
Yeah. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for coming back, Darren. Great to see you.
We missed you, Darren.
Sorry for my absence. I shall be a regular again.
What are we doing tomorrow?
Mikey.
Huh?
Oh, we're bringing
Mike.
No? We're bringing Bullard back, right?
Bullard's back.
Yeah.
Bullard's back with his lawyer this time.
I can't believe how many fucking people contacted me about that pod we did on Saturday. I had to go back and rewatch it because I was 6 deep before we were an hour in.
Yeah.
I was regretting not drinking on this pod today because I was having a tough time keeping up.
We that interview with Mike Bullard that we did was obviously the biggest interview that we've had, but that was all Mike. You know, that was us just listening, and his story is incredible. So tomorrow, a guy that's helping him, his name's Rob, is going to come in and kind of explain the legal parts of this whole thing, and then Mike wants to talk about the response, which has been crazy, right? Like he's had a huge response from people who have said, "Listen, I didn't know that you went through that. I didn't know that happened to you," because Mike's life was ruined, and he's Canadian comedic royalty, and he doesn't deserve what happened to him. So,
and notice the silence of the same media that were all so quick to crucify him when it happened.
Crazy.
They haven't said a word, and they know about it because I sent it to every last one of them.
Yeah,
you know what's interesting?
I emailed it to them.
Good move. Love it, James. Good move. I find it interesting, just based on that conversation that we had on Saturday, because I came into it I even phoned Dean, and I'm like, I don't know too many people who are accused of stalking that are innocent. Is this a good idea?
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of people in the business are, and in the media are, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're scared to put somebody on like Bullard, who has a story like that, because of everyone.
People are going to tweet them.
Decided.
Oh yeah, people are going to tweet. That's why Mike is going to have a hard time working for another institution, right? Because people are going to tweet and go, "Hey, listen, you hired that guy because this is what I heard," and that's the last thing media companies want. It's
I just want to also
gross.
I just want to say I've changed my handle, if you've noticed, because I'm now 2 for 2. I'm now 2 for 2 with guests that were supposed to be controversial, but turns out they were not. Got to listen to Jamesy.
At showrunner.
Yeah, that's right.
Still upset I didn't get to ask John about Jimmy Edmonton, who was the drummer in Steppenwolf. Was Jerry from Edmonton?
Wrong guy.
Wrong guy.
H. It's all about the H.
Yeah, you fucked it up. Not the same.
At first, I wasn't sure if John was going to appreciate my Steppenwolf humor. I think he came around though.
Dude, he's that, like, for an intellectual guy, when he first started, and he's like, I can't keep up with you guys, or I don't know if I'm going to do well at this thing, and because I'm an academic and I'm used to talking with academics, I wasn't offended by it, but I was like, oh my god, is this guy going to be a wiener? But he was terrific.
He was awesome.
Terrific.
I think his deadpan is hard to spot sometimes, and I think he was just sort of joking about that. Yeah.
Made me laugh, dude. He's like a silent assassin with his humor. I like that.
He's pretty good.
So one more tease. We got Jack Michaels on Thursday, and Jack is a local play-by-play guy who was on radio for 100 years, and they just put him on the broadcast, on the television broadcast. So he does the Oilers games. A lot of people might not necessarily know his name. He just replaced Kevin, and Oiler fans will know him because they love him. He was on 630 Ched here for quite a few years. He came from, I think it was we'll get his story on Thursday, but I think he was calling games in Alaska, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, he was the GM and the play-by-play guy for an ECHL team in Alaska.
Yeah, and he made his way down, and his call is awesome. I remember I sent Dean a note saying, we got to get Jack on. He just made a Tommy Boy reference on national television.
Yeah, I'm excited. Jack Michaels, play-by-play guy for the Edmonton Oilers, is going to join us.
That'll be fun.
On Thursday. Tomorrow, we've got a follow-up with Bullard and his lawyer, Rob, who's a great guy. I had a 40-minute conversation with him today, which is great. The more lawyers we can surround ourselves with as friends, the easier time we'll have with it.
I see what you're doing there.
You're probably going to get a message from Jon Kay of BBC News that he is not Jonathan Kay of Quillette, because you tagged Jon Kay of correspondent to BBC News.
Oh, that's fucking awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it, Dean.
Well, listen, appreciate it, guys. Busy week this week. Darren,
speaking of Johns that are blocking you.
Yeah, see you guys tomorrow, 3:30. Appreciate it. 3 o'clock. We'll see you then. Darren Pfeiffer, Lachlan Cross, James DiFiore. Appreciate everybody being here. Lachlan, of course, from 95.7 Cruise FM. Darren from the rock and roll band Goldfinger. And, of course, the Dangerous Darren podcast, which you can get at deanblundell.com and anywhere you get your fine podcasts. And James DiFiore from blackballmedia.ca, at James DiFiore on Twitter, at Lachlan Cross on Twitter, at Darren99 on Twitter. There you go. Well, that's it for us. Have a great day, everybody. That was fun. Appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow. And until then, here's the end credit video thing that we did with all of our sponsors. Have a great day.
hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
Goose.
All right. Well, we should probably move on from the domestic dispute discussions.
She can't hear any of the words except for my words. So,
right.
all right.
Okay. Well, we're good then.
That